Yep, I'm just pushing it now, so take 1 second, and then I just need to shut it off so I don't have that feedback like I have had.
It's on.
Okay, hang on. Okay. Okay, we're good to go.
Okay, the time is now 6:31 p.m. If everyone could mute until you're called on. I'll call this meeting to order at 6:31 on July 7th, 2020. First item on the agenda is the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. It's very strange saying that without hearing other voices.
I know, it is weird.
Okay. Next item on the agenda is roll call. Roll call, please.
Mayor Lofgren.
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Ott. Mayor Pro Tem Ott. Trustee Westcott.
Here.
Okay, thank you. Trustee Doherty. Trustee Doherty, maybe?
There.
Okay. Sorry, you're muted. Hang on. Trying to unmute you. It's not letting me.
There we go.
There you go.
Here. Sorry, it froze up on me. I don't know what's going on.
That's okay. Trustee Jeffrey.
Here.
Thank you. Trustee Morris, not here. Oh, there he is, right there. Trustee Morris.
I'm here.
Okay, thank you. Trustee Strock.
Present.
Okay, thanks.
There's Dave. You want to try Dave one more time?
Yes, Trustee Dave. Trustee Ott. No? Okay, there he goes. Can you hear us?
Did it come through? I'm present.
Yep, we can hear you now. Thank you.
Okay.
So everyone is present and accounted for. Next item on the agenda is the approval of the agenda. Do I have a motion?
I move to approve the agenda as presented.
Second.
I have a motion from Trustee Jeffrey and a second from Trustee Doherty. All in roll call, please.
Trustee Doherty.
Yes.
Trustee Ott.
Yes.
Trustee Westcott.
Yes.
Mayor Lofgren.
Yes.
Trustee Jeffrey.
Yes.
Trustee Morris.
Yes.
Trustee Strock.
Yes.
Thank you.
The motion carries 7-0. The agenda is approved. Next item on the agenda is audience business. And did we receive anything via email, Clerk Blackstein?
We do not have anything via email. No comments.
And I believe all of the attendees tonight are here for the public hearing, but if you want to check with Jim just to make sure he doesn't have anything else.
Okay. Hi, Jim. Were you here just for the public comment for the ordinance, or are you here for audience participation?
Right now, just for the ordinance.
Okay. All right. Then we will get back to you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, no public business tonight. Next item on the agenda is the consent agenda. For the benefit of the audience, the items on tonight's consent agenda are the July 7th, 2020 payment approval report in the amount of $1,074,499.01 and the July 16, 2020 minutes. Do I have a motion?
I move to approve the minutes as presented. I'm sorry. Strike that. I move to approve the consent agenda as presented.
I'll second that one.
Okay, I have a motion from Trustee Jeffrey and a second from Trustee Doherty. Roll call, please.
Trustee Jeffrey.
Yes.
Trustee Strock.
Yes.
Thank you. Trustee Ott.
Yes.
Trustee Westcott.
Yes.
Trustee Morris.
Yes.
Mayor Lofgren.
Yes,
Trustee Doherty.
Yes.
Thank you.
and the motion carries 7-0. Next item on the agenda is, we're getting feedback from someone. Okay. Next item on the agenda is action item 7A, ordinance 2020-656, concerning standards for motor vehicle related sales and service operations. Ms. Duran.
Good evening, Mayor and trustees. This is a continuation of a public hearing that was opened in early June and then continued to a date certain, being this evening. We, at that initial notice public hearing, went through the provisions of this ordinance, as I recall, paragraph by paragraph. And the ordinance as it stands tonight has not been amended since that conversation. So unless somebody wants me to re-engage in going through this provision by provision, I won't belabor the points any longer. Essentially, as you can all recall, just as an overview, this is a land use ordinance that amends the land development code as it pertains to a certain group of uses referred to as motor vehicle sales and service uses within our code, which encompasses such uses as car washes, truck stops, gas stations, vehicle repair minor, vehicle repair major, ambulance yards, and automobile storage yards. What essentially it does is outlines those zoning districts in which those uses are conditionally allowed. No longer any of those uses by right. In all cases under this ordinance, those uses are now conditionally allowed, which means they would come to the Board of Trustees, the site plan for you to review and determine based on the code and the regulations that you're adopting here, what conditions, if any, make sense on that proposed use. So I think that's a pretty good overview, but I'm stand here for any questions that you may have of me.
So I will check for virtual hands if anyone has questions for Maureen before I reopen the public hearing. Any initial questions? Trustee Strack.
When I make my comment, I would like to suggest an amendment to this ordinance. Will that be okay?
Yeah, that would be an appropriate time for that would be after we have the public, after we hear the public comments.
Okay, thank you very much.
Yep. Any other questions or comment or concerns for Maureen before we open the public hearing? Seeing none, I will open the public hearing portion of tonight's ordinance consideration at 6:38 p.m. And Clerk Blackston, if you could turn to our attendees and see if any of them wish to speak on this topic.
Yes. Carolyn, I see your hand is up. So would you like to go first?
That's just fine. Thank you very much. Mayor, do I have a time limit?
You do not.
Okay, I'll be brief nonetheless. Thank you. Mayor and members of the board and staff, this is Carolyn White again with Brownstein Hyatt Farber Schreck. I'm here on behalf of my client, Quick Trip, which is under contract to purchase and hopefully develop property within the town. And their proposal, which has not yet been submitted, would potentially be impacted by this ordinance if you proceed to adopt it tonight in its current form. As we discussed at the prior first reading, at the opening of this hearing about 5 or 6 weeks ago. And first, I'd like to thank the board for continuing that hearing to tonight to allow us some time to have additional conversations with staff, to seek some opportunity to speak to some of the trustees about understanding what they're trying to achieve with this ordinance, and for us to understand a little more fully how it might impact Quick Trip's potential plans for the property. As it stands through that process, where we landed was to propose 2 very narrow, very specific changes to the ordinance. And I did send a red line over to the town attorney yesterday, and we had a chance to speak about it a little bit. I'll explain briefly what those 2 proposed changes are and why we're asking that you consider them tonight. The 2 changes are to, 1, make truck stops a conditional use rather than a prohibited use in the C commercial zone district. And that is the tiniest, almost imperceptible change on the document. It just puts the letter C in the box in the chart. But the impact of it means that Quick Trip's current proposal, which would be classified as a truck stop under this definition, could be submitted and reviewed and considered by the town. It also means that it would still come to the Board of Trustees for review, approval, denial, approval with conditions, et cetera. And it means that the board would still have to judge for itself whether or not the proposal met all of the requirements in this code, which we're not proposing to change, such as 15% open space, harmonious and compatible with the surrounding development, meets the character of the neighborhood, and all of the other criteria that are included in this ordinance. As I think I mentioned in the previous email, and we had a chance to speak with some of you about, Quick Trip is very proud of its national reputation as a high quality operator that builds high quality facilities. And they are not afraid of coming before you to prove that they meet all of those criteria. And we think we'll be able to demonstrate that to your satisfaction if given the opportunity. So that's the first change. We're suggesting that you change truck stops to a conditional use in the C zone district. The second change, in the definition of a fueling station, right now, the ordinance says that a fueling station is up to 1.75 acres. And we are proposing that that be changed to 2.5 acres to slightly enlarge the cap on how big a fueling station can be to still fall within that definition. And the reason for that is that as Quick Trip is an example, but there are a whole category of operators within this class of uses that build larger stores with more amenities, more offerings, more fresh food that requires a slightly bigger footprint. And also, in order to accommodate all the site amenities and make it fit into the character of the neighborhood, you need a little bit more space. And if you set the cap at 1.75, even if this proposal didn't include any truck stop facilities and really was a straight up fueling station only, Quick Trip still couldn't submit a proposal to you and fit within that 1.75 acres because their requirements for proper circulation, pedestrian circulation, landscaping, footprint of the building, parking, all of those things would not fit comfortably and still meet all of the quality criteria within a 1.75 acre site. So even if they decided not to do a truck stop for some reason, or if somebody else did, we think that 1.75 is a little bit too small to be a quality fueling station, whether it's Quick Trip or some other operator. And so those are our two requests to you. We would ask that you consider making those two changes to the ordinance: conditional use for truck stops in the C zone district, and change 1.75 acres to 2.5 in the definition of fueling station. I know that Mike Talcott on behalf of Quick Trip is also available if the board has further questions and wants to drill down on either of those issues. And we'd be happy to dialogue with you about it further, but I'll stop my remarks at that point and just leave you with that request. Thanks for the opportunity to speak on this ordinance.
Thank you. And Clerk Blackson, if you want to turn to Mr. Talcott next, since he's been referenced, that would be appropriate.
Hello,
You're muted, Linda.
Can you guys hear me now?
There you go. Yep, there you go.
Okay. Mr. Mayor, Board of Trustees, thank you for giving me the opportunity tonight. Carolyn did a very good job, as per usual, of summing up our request for your consideration. As she touched on, we are more than just a fueling station. We're a convenience store, fresh made-to-order food, just a wide variety of offerings that bring people to our store more than just to get gas. With that, the 1.75 is awfully tight. I know some of you have seen some of our perspectives, possible elevations that show, we put a premium on making our sites look as good as we feel they are. Just upping the square footage to the larger footprint of the over 2 acres gives us the opportunity to landscape it correctly, still allows for ample parking, circulation through the lot, which she was very accurate in. It's not just vehicular, it's pedestrian as well. So I definitely hope that you consider these requests, and I look forward to trying to work with you guys to come up with a great offer that everyone can be happy with. And with that, just like Carolyn said, I'm happy to answer any specific questions you might have.
Okay. And we generally don't entertain questions during this portion of the hearing.
Fair enough.
The next person up would be Clerk Blackston.
We'll go with Mr. Antonoff. Let me allow him to talk. Okay, Mr. Antonoff.
Thank you, board, for allowing me to comment here. I do appreciate your giving us the additional time to try to work through this, to try to figure out really what can make the town happy with this facility and the development overall, and meet whatever kinds of criteria there are. I've struggled with how to approach my comments here tonight, because I feel like one of the fundamental issues that we're talking about here was decided when we had a previous town attorney say that a settlement agreement we had was not valid, and that settlement agreement, by the way, said that we were not bound by ordinances put into effect after April of, I believe, 1994. We tried to work with the town at that time. We were stonewalled. We were not allowed to do anything. Our only option was to litigate it. We went through this whole long litigation, and the arbitrator decided in our favor. I would encourage all of the town board members to read the arbitration award, because I think it's very clear that we're not bound by any ordinances taken or enacted after that date, unless the town can clearly show that they are for health, safety, and welfare, and the burden of proof is on the town pursuant to the arbitration award to prove that. What we've tried to do here since the last meeting and during this one is to encourage the town to just engage in a dialogue with us. Let's see if we can resolve this, get the town what the town wants, and avoid going back to this. I don't want this to sound like a threat, but put yourself in my position. If we get to the point where this passes and Quick Trip says, if this is what it is, we're out of this deal, you've left me with no options, and you've left Quick Trip with no options. So we're just asking for this to be a dialogue where you tell us really what the real concerns are here, and see if we can work through it amicably. It seems to me foolish to just dive into this thing, and it's like Groundhog Day all over again. And again, I'm happy to answer any questions. I'm happy to be at any meetings. I'm happy to talk with anybody about this. I really would like to find a way to resolve this in a way that makes the town happy and not have to resort to other measures. So again, I hope that doesn't come across as a threat. I'm just telling you that, you know, if you leave me with no options, you leave me with no options.
Okay, thank you for your comments. And I think we will list here first. I think we had one more person, Mr. Kimberly, up for public comment. After Mr. Kimberly's comments, if anyone does have questions for any of the speakers tonight, I will open the floor to those questions. And by questions, I mean questions, not back and forth exchanges. So if Mr. Kimberly is interested in speaking.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
All right. Well, thank you for the opportunity to share my thoughts. Certainly, when I had the opportunity to attend a past council session meeting where this topic came up, certainly my thoughts continue to be the same through this evening. And I am not advocating one way or the other, but clearly with comments that have been made, and I would say this if I was standing in town hall with everybody present, so I don't want folks to think I'm hiding via Zoom. But my comments to town trustees that I hope that over the last few weeks where you had time to deliberate and take comments and have further discussion, that you make a decision that is best for the town and the residents and not adhere to threats that continue to be made to all of you and personally to all of us that live in this town. That I have every bit of trust in all of you tonight to make whatever decision you think is best for the town, and certainly whatever direction you go, for what it's worth, at least you have the support of this resident. But I think the point that I wanted to make, and I would have made it, at any time in the past that this topic came up, is that it needs to be about what is best for the town, and certainly not to be intimidated by any comments by anybody involved in this process. So that's all I'd wanted to say, and I thank you all for the time this evening to allow me to share my comments.
Thank you for your comments. And then I will look for virtual hands if anyone has any questions for any of our speakers tonight. Raise your hand now and I'll allow you to ask those questions. I know several of us have already had a chance to get some of our questions and concerns addressed in separate meetings, but I'm not seeing any virtual hands. So I will say thank you to everyone who spoke on this topic tonight. Your thoughts and concerns are definitely part of our deliberations tonight, and will be considered as we make our comments after this. At 6:52 p.m., I will close the public hearing portion of this ordinance consideration and move on to trustee comments on the matter as we decide whether to adopt or reject this ordinance. I will start from what is usually my far left, which would be trustee Westcott.
So I appreciate the opportunity to talk about this. I feel really strongly that the comprehensive plan and its goal to develop a family-oriented community is a goal that's really close to the hearts of the residents of our town. Many of us have moved up here to get away from the hustle and bustle of more urban parts of the Denver metro area. And so I think that this ordinance really helps to promote that goal, to keep Lochbuie or to develop it further as a family-oriented community. One of the things that I see right now as an obstacle to our town's growth is just that we're so segmented right now. And I feel like the commercial properties that we have available are very limited. And I really would like to see those be used for commercial development that would bring the town members closer together. And I see that happening through dining, entertainment, personal services. And I really, we're not a huge town, and making those accessible to pedestrian traffic and things like that, I think is really important. And so I think what I really support about this ordinance is that it gives us the opportunity to really build the town that is connects to the plan that we've adopted, and it can help to bring the community together. As I talk to my neighbors, as I read things that they're posting on social media, this limitation on the development of motor vehicle businesses, I think it really speaks to the things that I'm hearing residents say, that anytime we hear about in nearby communities in Brighton or whatever, that they've opened a new tire repair or whatever, there's always pushback on that. Why do we need another one of those? What we need are some good restaurants. We need, we want a Whole Foods, things like that, again, I think sort of blend with this residential oriented community. So I definitely support this ordinance. As a person whose property actually sits right adjacent to one of those commercial lots, I have a real concern that I want to make sure that what goes in there is going to be something that is in harmony with my vision and the vision that the town has of what our town should be. And that's all. Thank you.
And just to clarify your last point, trustee Westcott, if you're fine with it, would you put on the record where your property is, which part of town that's in?
Sure. I live on the, I'm going to get this wrong, the southwest part of town. So I'm right at 50th and 168th. So there's that large commercial lot that's not, it's zoned commercial, but it hasn't been developed yet.
Thank you. Next person next to Trustee Westcott is Trustee Morris.
Hello, good evening, everyone. Can you hear me?
Yep, go ahead.
Okay, thanks. Apologize for the connectivity issues. I don't know why video is not working. I even put a shirt and tie on for this thing and it's not even coming through there. I think first I would like to echo a little bit of what Trustee Westcott said, her remarks about our comprehensive plan. If I could help us recall how that process went down, that was back when the town was experiencing some tremendous growth, and we put a lot of time, effort, and money into developing an overall vision for the town for the next 20 years, our comprehensive plan, what the town looked like presently, what we wanted it to look like in the near-term future, and then the long-term future. We got a lot of public input from the citizens on what essentially the voice of the people was and how we wanted to steer our town. If you remember, I think the cost of that process was close to $100,000. And the document that came out of it is a great resource that I refer to often when it comes to making decisions. It provided an outline for how we wanted the town to develop, how we wanted things to progress. And of course, there were some things that weren't completely fleshed out in that process. And I appreciate that we've taken a look at a specific element that needs to be a little more specified in a little more detail as far as how we're categorizing truck stops versus fueling stations and so forth. In terms of our comprehensive plan and where we're going with it, we have to remember that our town sits on only 3.5 square miles of real estate. It's not very big. It's predominantly homes and neighborhoods. It's a bedroom community. We don't have a lot of commercial yet or retail, which we know that we've been working for years on trying to recruit and attract some commercial and retail development. I am thrilled that Quick Trip is interested in a chunk of our land. I appreciate their interest. I appreciate Mr. Antonov trying to work out a deal to develop his property in a chunk of our town. That being said, we do have very limited commercial space. A lot of that is along the County Road 2 corridor on both sides. It really is prime real estate, and I'm stunned that it hasn't been gobbled up by now by other developers. That land that's along there, that falls right in with what our comprehensive plan's vision was on how to develop it and what we envision for the future. I don't think that any vision included having a large scale vehicle servicing facility in that stretch. One of the core principles of our comprehensive plan, if I may quote from it for a second, if you'll indulge me, that document says, Lochbuie is a family-oriented community that's active and vibrant. Our strong sense of community is built on strong families. We provide for our current and future residents through excellent schools, welcoming neighborhoods, and this is what I want to highlight, is a quote, wide range of shopping opportunities, et cetera, et cetera. My fear is that if we allow a large-scale motor vehicle service, if we don't do something to better regulate that, then we're going to lose our trajectory in trying to achieve a wide range of shopping opportunities. I don't want us to become oversaturated in one particular use type. I don't think that a large-scale truck stop is the best fit for our community, especially in that corridor where commercial space is limited and where it is in extreme close proximity to residential areas. From numerous conversations with the residents in town in general, and kind of in that area in particular, none of them want to have a truck stop there. And when we think about truck stops, we think of large, noisy vehicles in and out all the time, light pollution, noise pollution, the wear and tear on the roads and so forth, the noise that would affect negatively the residents and stuff. None of the town members that I've spoken with think that that's a good idea. I don't think anyone is opposed to having a truck stop in town. That's why I like this ordinance, in that it stipulates that truck stops and large scale motor vehicle operations would be confined to industrial areas, which I think is appropriate. I appreciate the ordinance and the specificity that it is providing for it. I think it's necessary, and I'm in favor of it. I think it's important to help affect diverse growth in our commercial areas. And I think I'll yield at this point.
Next up would be Trustee Strack.
Are you sure about that?
You're the closest to me on the left, so you're next on the list.
Okay, all right. Well, I guess I'll start out, and I hope there's not a time limit on this, but you know, I learned many years ago, one doesn't have to be in the right to bring litigation. One only has to have expendable cash and time. You know, towns are a lot like a person. Black Bowie is an infant in comparison to towns and cities with many years of experience. When a new business comes to town, we are grateful, maybe overwhelmed, but maybe we are too grateful and we are not careful enough. Because of this, the town can be easy prey for the smart fish. The town can and has been taken advantage of in the past and maybe even duped. This ordinance, 2020-656, is like Bowie's attempt to stand back up and keep past mistakes from occurring again. It is an attempt to review and redefine the standards for motor vehicle related sales and service operation. It requires land uses as described in section 1 of this ordinance, subject to conditional use, meaning that these uses will be brought before the appropriate board for review. The conditional use process will ensure that the next time a new business comes to town, the board will know about it before it is completed without any input or discussion. When one drives north of County Road 2 on the Centennial Highway, you may want to call it Highway 85, one immediately can see the real need or purpose for light industrial zoning. All the land uses described in this amendment can be seen in just 1 or 2 miles, with the exception of the ambulance service. Your vision of this clearly defines the need for light industrial land use and separation from residential. Additionally, there are a number of compounds that are injurious to human health that are released from these types of businesses, fueling stations and underground storage vent tanks. These compounds include benzene, toluene, ethylbenzene, and xylene, better known as BTX. These are the same pollutants that are produced in oil and gas operations. Measures to reliably resolve the adverse health effects are not employed by any of these services. Of these compounds, benzene is the most harmful to human health. The adverse health effects of benzene include nausea, cancer, anemia, increased infections, and once again, LBW, which is low birth rate in newborns. These are the same issues with oil and gas production facilities, isn't it not? It's the same. The World Health Organization guideline for indoor air quality states there is no safe level of benzene. A 2001 study noted benzene levels in houses at 328 feet from fueling stations were high. 2003 and 2004 study conducted in France documented a significant relationship between child leukemia and living near a fueling station. In 2012, Brazilian researchers found air quality was degraded up to 492 feet from a fueling station. I strongly believe we need to amend an amendment to this ordinance that will create a minimum health safety zone. Yes, a safety zone between fueling stations and similar businesses, sensitive land uses, such as residents, schools, daycare centers, playgrounds, and medical facilities. These are the same compounds that are harmful to humans and the environment. The town approved a setback of 500 feet and 1,000 feet from schools imposed on the oil and gas industries. I believe the same setbacks are justified here without a doubt. With all these conditional uses, there will be lighting impacts. Lighting is essential for safety and profitability, but too much lighting and area residents may suffer from glare in their bedrooms or they lose their view of the night sky. There's a phenomenon known as ratcheting. This is where a new business installs bright lights on their business. The new lights cause nearby establishments to look darker. And before long, they install brighter lights. And so goes the spiral battle to outdo your neighbor. Ratcheting can greatly increase light trespass impacts to area residents. We've all taken our vehicles in for service. We're familiar with the loud noise generated by repair facilities. You know, a tire air gun is 104 decibels. Air chisel is 112 decibels. An accelerating diesel truck is 114 decibels and 100 decibels when it's idling. So if you have a late or all-night establishment, we have a use which definitely does not belong near houses. Fueling station can lower the value of nearby homes. The Federal Housing Authority insured mortgages are not available to properties within 300 feet for properties within 300 feet of tanks capable storing 1,000 gallons or more. Most storage tanks have a capacity which far exceeds 1,000 gallons. Because of high traffic volume and refueling, many of these uses also pose an unusually severe threat to ground and surface waters. Fueling stations have runoffs 30 times higher than residential runoffs. Many compounds used in vehicle repair are cancer-causing agents. So how far should these facilities be from wells and surface waters? Well, the question is, how far will a plume of spilled fuel travel underground? The 90 percentile distance is 400 feet. 400 feet, add another 100 feet for grout containers or curtains or other preventive measures. And a fueling station and related services should be no closer than 500 feet to a well, wetland, or surface runoff. When one takes into account all and realizes the human health risks, the pollution, air, water, light, and noise caused by these establishments, one must surely realize the need for a minimum safety zone. I implore the board to approve this ordinance with an amendment of 500 of a 500-foot minimum safety zone to protect the public's health. Thank you.
Thank you, and thank you for your proposed amendment. When it comes time to make a motion, you can certainly make that amendment. We'll see if it passes.
Thank you.
Next person on would be the closest on my right, Trustee Ott.
Well, I think I finally have my video working again. So I'm probably one of the longest people in the town, maybe next to Larry Strock. I've been here almost 11 years. And when I first got here, the attitude was, let's get whatever commercial we can. Go for it, whatever. Doesn't matter. The consequences be damned. And I'm glad to see we've changed that. I mean, I realize this is going to make some businesses that can't be in town, but it's something that we need to look at, the citizens, what they want. And I understand the commercial and sales property taxes we could definitely use, but I understand that tax revenue generation is important, but it shouldn't be the only consideration. And that's all I have to say. I feel this ordinance is well within what we should be doing for the best interests of our citizens.
Okay. Next up would be Trustee Doherty.
One second. So I guess a couple of things. I think the first thing is, at least personally, and I would imagine when you talk to most people, including most people with the town, that are the residents of town, if you kind of have a vision of what a truck stop looks like, and I guess also kind of understanding that commercial zones are often kind of a buffer zone between, industrial and residential. I personally don't think that, at least what I kind of envision and what I have in mind and what most likely most people have in mind of what a truck stop looks like, such as the one up in Kingsburg, I don't think that's a proper use at all in a commercial zone. Looking at those are definitely kind of more in line with light industrial than a commercial zone. Whereas like a gas station or fueling station, I think does align a little bit more with kind of what you would see oftentimes in other towns as well, in kind of commercial in commercial areas that are nested and kind of buried within residential zones. But I don't think that's appropriate for a truck stop. And I think even beyond that, with our comprehensive plan, we've talked a little bit about being a family-oriented community, and I think that kind of goes to that same ideal as well. I think the ordinance does a really good job. I think it does. We definitely need to differentiate between gas stations and truck stops. I think we've had some lessons learned that we've learned from other communities, but I also think even with some of the recent development that we've seen in the town, there's even some lessons learned on some of our own development that we've already seen, that we really need to get these definitions in place and really set kind of a standard and a precedence moving forward. The ordinance really wouldn't foreclose on interstate commerce based on, all of the sites that we have in town that this would still be available for, including 2 current sites that do both currently accommodate for interstate commerce. You know, I think the key things that I see in the ordinance is, like I said, providing really good and needed definitions for various land uses. It takes into consideration and aligns well with the adopted comprehensive plan that we spent a lot of time on and had, honestly, I mean, remembering back to that, I mean, we actually had a lot of community involvement for that. And, you know, as all of us on the board know, I mean, getting community involvement's generally been something pretty difficult to do. So the fact that we actually had a lot of community involvement on that, I think shows, you know, a lot that the community itself was really interested in that and really kind of took that effort and that initiative to heart. So I think that really shows, you know, the importance of that plan to the town. And so I think keeping with that character, and I think this ordinance does that. I think it does help. The ordinance helps promote and maintain kind of the recognizable identity and character of the town. I think that, again, that really ties back into, you know, the town being a lot more family oriented. You know, we're definitely more of a bedroom community, but I think that really makes us, you know, a lot more close knit. I think a lot of people know their neighbors really well. You know, one of the things that we've been working on is getting, you know, more trails and things like that through town. And I think all of those things really kind of tie into really trying to make this, you know, not just a community, but a really well tied together and close knit community. You know, to kind of talk to Trustee Strock's point about providing a zone, a buffer zone, you know, I agree that we should do that. However, I think that's what we should be doing as a board through zoning. You know, if we don't want, based on this ordinance, if we don't want a truck stop, that based on this ordinance would be limited to light industrial, then we shouldn't zone light industrial within those setbacks that we were talking about next to residential. So I think this actually does a really good job of actually accommodating that, where we can make sure that our zoning accommodates for those type of things. Because I absolutely agree, there are things, and beyond even this, there are, you know, other business types and land uses that could be very detrimental to be close to a school or community or to residential neighborhoods. And so that's why we should make sure that those are, you know, limited to, you know, light industrial or to the zones that we think those are appropriate, and then make sure that we're not zoning areas next to residential or where those areas that we want to protect, where those are at. You know, I think the last thing really is specific to the size. You know, the 1.75, I think is a good number. You know, I think from my understanding through staff is we've done a decent amount of research on that, and to come up with that number, and other communities have that. I think to maybe kind of have a little bit of a middle ground, one of the things that I did look at is there's a gas station that's in the middle of a community in Greeley, off of 71st Avenue and 20th. And when I look at that, it's actually slightly over 1.75. And so to kind of, I guess, maybe to allow a little bit bigger, but not still kind of the full-fledged, I wouldn't mind actually increasing it to 2 acres, just increasing it just slightly. I think it gets us a little bit more flexibility for those. They're still conditional use, so I still think the board would have the ability to make sure that it fits into the community in the area. But again, when I look at a couple of the gas stations that I would really consider gas stations that are part of communities and serve kind of the communities, I have found a couple that are a little bit bigger than that. So that's why I think potentially bumping to the 2.0 would be beneficial. But I still think even without that, the 1.7 still does make sense, and I would approve this ordinance as is if that doesn't get full support.
Okay, Thank you. And I'm going to turn to Trustee Jeffrey, but after Trustee Jeffrey's comments, I will circle back around for any follow-up comments and for discussion on the proposal by Trustee Strack and the proposal by Trustee Doherty. So Trustee Jeffrey?
Thank you, Mayor. One of the great things about being the last one called on is that a lot of points have been made already. So I will try really hard not to be very redundant, and I apologize in advance if I am. When I think about the exit up on I-25 where Johnson's Corner sits, or even the Love's Truck Stop in Hudson, I don't associate those areas with a residential community. I know that truck stops make sense given our location on I-76, but I think we might be able to identify other areas of our town where it might be more appropriate for a truck stop, where there wouldn't be as much of a negative impact on traffic, aesthetics, noise, lighting, a lot of things that people have mentioned already. And that would not detract from our goals of attracting more diversity in the retail sector. I support this ordinance. I see a couple of key objectives that I'm not sure have been clearly stated yet. It protects and enhances the character and quality of our commercial and our industrial districts, as well as the adjacent neighborhoods. It creates a higher level of expectation in the quality of motor vehicle related uses in terms of site design and aesthetics. It does give us some flexibility so that we can respond to unique conditions and constraints that may come up down the road for us with specific areas in our town. And most importantly for me, it minimizes those negative impacts to adjacent uses resulting from on-site activities. Thank you.
Okay, so with that, I will circle back around. We had tons of comments from everyone. So if anyone has any follow-up comments, I'll open the floor for those via virtual hand. In particular, I'm looking for discussion on Trustee Strack's potential amendment and on Trustee Doherty's potential amendment. So I'll look for hands here, whoever wants to speak first to any of those issues. I'm not seeing, oh, there we go. Trustee Strack.
I was kind of holding out there for a second. I kind of understand exactly what Trustee Doherty was talking about, protecting ourselves with our zoning. But this safety zone would also protect us from fueling stations that really don't fall into a truck stop category, or services that potentially pollute and are harmful that don't really fall into that category also. I think it is just a prudent and safe way to protect our citizens. And I think we owe it to them for that. So it's my rebuttal, I guess. Thank you.
Trustee Morris.
Yeah, for as long as I've known Trustee Strack, he has always been an advocate and an ambassador for the environment. And I can't thank him enough for always having that perspective to share with us. As far as a 500-foot buffer, right now, honestly, I don't know. I like the sound of it, but I think I would appreciate a little bit more time, a little more information to digest how that would be implemented, how it would be, I guess how the nuts and bolts of how that would go down. Like I said, on the surface, I like the idea of that, but trying to drill down into it in my mind here, I think there may be some technical and logistical details that I would like to kind of work through before committing to something like that.
So you're registering no opposition, but saying potentially as a separate ordinance or a later amendment to this ordinance?
Yeah, I think that would sit better with me, is to maybe pick that up at a future time and then maybe amend what we're amending tonight. I don't know if I'm comfortable throwing that in at the proverbial 11th hour, and then trying to add that in. Not that I don't admire and appreciate and respect that consideration. I would appreciate a little more time to chew on that specific element of it.
Right. Okay. Trustee App. Dave. You're muted, Dave. There you go.
Okay, I'm unmuted now. We've spent a lot of our money and the citizens' money on improving County Road 2. And County Road 2 is a major residential thoroughfare. It's Silver Peaks, Bright Crossing, the new Lockwood Station, Berkshire. It's all mainly for residential and for our citizens. And I guess my problem with a 500-foot setback is that maybe I would discuss it later, but at this point, I would say no, because it would preclude some things that we do need for the town in those undeveloped areas. So that's my feeling. No, I don't think I would go along with the 500-foot setback.
Mayor, you're muted.
So I see Trustee Strack's hands up.
I just wanted to say that this setback of 500 feet basically just comes from a lot of the scientific data of what is really safe. Maybe 382 feet is better, maybe 350. Nonetheless, these are chemicals that are affecting our children, and it may not affect us today, but it will affect us tomorrow, and it will also affect our citizens' pocketbooks paying for these health hazards. Maybe we could accept this ordinance with an amendment of a safety zone with a distance to be determined later. Thank you.
Yeah, I want to give I want to give Attorney Giron a chance to weigh in on whether that would be appropriate or not.
The devil is so in the details on something like that. I would have to understand where you're measuring from and what the public purpose is. And if that's something that's important, I understand where you're coming from. If that's something that was important to the board, I don't think we could just on the fly do that here this evening. That's something that we would have to basically kick the can down the road on your decision here and keep this process going while we talk about that a little bit more. And I try to draft some language that addresses what the concerns are. I guess that's all I really can say at that tonight.
Okay. Yeah, and I'm not seeing any more hands right now, and I get the sense that no one is really objecting to that right now, Trustee Strack. I think the concern is trying to do it tonight. So I think maybe that's a more appropriate thing for a separate consideration, and we can, consider that as soon as the next meeting if you want to chat with Maureen about what that might look like between now and then if this does pass tonight. I'm looking for any further hands. I haven't seen any discussion yet on Trustee Doherty's concept of increasing the limit to 2 acres, if anyone has anything to say on that. I see Trustee Strack's hand up.
I didn't have a comment on that. I just want to say I'm proud to be part of this board, and my measurements were just from the nearest residential for that purpose. And I completely agree with everybody. Thank you.
Okay, looking for any final hands. Okay, I'm going to throw my comments out there real quick. Like Trustee Jeffrey said, kind of the downside of being the last person to talk is that a lot of the things you want to say have already been said. So I just kind of want to give a brief summary of the things I heard tonight and the things that really persuaded me. Trustee Strack's comment that we're really in our infancy as a town really was very persuasive to me. Along with Trustee Doherty's comment that we have a lot of lessons learned over our 46-year history, and including our recent history and watching some of the development that's happened around us when we didn't have these types of ordinances in effect. And I think what we've seen is without putting an ordinance like this in effect and without doing it now, we run the risk of very, very quickly becoming nothing but a gas station or truck stop town. Our businesses right now includes 2 gas stations, a small convenience store, and a Subway that's in a building that was previously empty. And right now, what we would be looking at is further gas station development, further truck stops along County Road 2, going up County Road 37, along County Road 4. It's just not the image we want for our small residential community, is the idea that we are a gas station and truck stop town. As Trustee Westcott mentioned, a brief glance at any social media or talking to anyone in this town will tell you that what we are not lacking for is gas stations or truck stops. People are looking for different types of commercial. And while I recognize that any commercial is a tax boon to the community, would bring us money into our coffers, that can't be the only or the most important consideration. We heard from at least one resident tonight who specifically said, do what's best for the town, even if that might not mean immediate tax revenue. And Mr. Kimberly's comment, in combination with the comments I see all over Facebook, all over Nextdoor, all over my conversations with people in town, suggests that people would not trade a little more tax revenue right now for a giant truck stop anywhere in town, whether it be right off of County Road 2, whether it be down by Trustee Westcott's home at the other end of County Road 2, or whether it be up by Bella Vista. It's just not an appropriate thing for our small community. Specifically talking to 2 of the suggestions we heard tonight, one was regarding increasing the size to 2.5 acres, and a little like Trustee Doherty suggested, I did a little bit of my own looking around at that, and I just cannot find any support for the idea that 2.5 acres is a reasonable size for a normal fueling station. That is an extraordinarily large gas station and far exceeds the size of either of the gas stations we currently have in town. I just don't see a need for that expansion. I don't think that's consistent with a commercial use. To me, that hitting that 2.5 acre size very quickly makes it something more appropriate for an industrial use, which is why we've listed truck stops as industrial uses. For that reason, I also do not favor the idea of changing truck stops to conditional uses in commercial zones. Truck stops don't have a place in commercial zones. They are an industrial use. A brief stop at Hudson's Love Station shows you that that is an industrial use. That's not a commercial use, and that change would not be appropriate. So kind of summarizing up everything I have to say, those are my comments. I think everything that we heard tonight, I agree with. I am 100% on board with at least discussing Trustee Strock's suggestion at a future meeting, because I think it is something that should be at least seriously considered, if not adopted. And as far as Trustee Doherty's comment that we increase from 1.75 to 2 acres, I don't have any strong objections to that, but I'm also not seeing a lot of concern from the board for changing that 1.75 to 2 acres. So unless anyone has any further comments, I will entertain a motion. I will look for hands now. Trustee Strock.
I'd like to make a motion to approve ordinance number 2020-656, an ordinance
Yeah,
of the
that's all
Board
I got.
of Trustee of the Town of Black Buoy, Colorado, extending and terminating an existing moratorium and amending several sections of Chapter 19 of the Town Code concerning zoning and development standards for motor vehicles related to sales and service operations.
Second,
Mayor, may
Okay,
I make a comment?
You may.
I'm sitting here tonight hearing where the board's going, and it hit me that one of the things that happened as a result of us continuing this ordinance was we potentially have opened up a window where the moratorium might go out of effect, and this ordinance, which attempts to extend the moratorium, might not be in effect. And I don't think that's the goal of this board. So I would ask that you consider an amendment to this ordinance that declares this an emergency ordinance and makes it immediately effective. Because you've identified public health, safety, and welfare concerns that to justify adopting this ordinance at all, then I think we have a public health, safety, and welfare concern that would make the immediate effectiveness of this ordinance appropriate. And I think we can articulate that in an amendment that would just simply state that the effective date is immediate and that there's a declaration of an emergency, and that emergency is the result of a desire not to allow a gap to develop in the existing moratorium. So I'm asking if Trustee Strzok, who made the motion, and I can't remember who made the second, would agree to an amendment to change this to an emergency ordinance. And obviously that takes a 3/4 vote of the board then to approve.
Yeah,
would
and
agree
I
to
will.
that.
I was just going to say, I think that's appropriate. All of the points that Trustee Strzok laid out earlier about the health and safety consequences of putting gas stations or truck stops near residential areas seem to suggest that that is perfectly appropriate. So I did hear an amended motion from you, Trustee Strzok. Is that true?
Yes, sir.
And I
Okay,
agree
and-
with the second.
Okay, so I have a motion from Trustee Strzok and a second from Trustee Ott to approve this as an emergency ordinance. Roll call, please.
Mayor Lofgren,
Yes.
Trustee Strzok,
Aye.
Trustee Doherty,
Yes.
Trustee Ott,
Aye.
Trustee Morris,
Yes.
Trustee Jeffrey,
Yes.
Trustee Westcott.
Yes.
Thank you.
And the motion carries. So,
Oh, sorry, Mayor. I was just going to let the clerk know that I will amend that ordinance in conformity with this motion and get it to you tonight or tomorrow for you to get them. Mayor to sign.
Did you call Trustee Doherty on the vote?
I did.
Okay, I missed that.
It's okay.
okay, so the motion carries 7-0. The town attorney will work with the clerk to get that amendment put into place, and then I will come sign it probably tomorrow or the day after.
Okay.
Next item is action item 7B, ordinance 2020-658 concerning the upcoming election. Clerk Blackson.
Okay, this ordinance will just have the adoption of the home rule charter to be on the ballot for this election in November of 2020, and then also to allow us to participate in the coordinated election so we can let Weld County know that we would do a coordinated election with them.
That'd be both Weldon and Adams County, right, Linda?
Well, we don't, so it's Weld and Adams, but currently we don't have any voters in Adams County. So, yes, so this one would just be Weld County.
Yep, until they build the houses. Any questions or concerns from anyone for Clerk Blackson or Mr. on this topic? I am seeing none. I will entertain a motion.
Mr. Mayor, I have a question.
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, I just wanted to clarify about the language that would be on the ballot. Is it true that it would just, the only thing on there will be that question from section 1, quote, shall the town of Logway form a home rule charter commission?
That question would be on there, followed by the names of the candidates to serve on the charter commission. So we need, if you recall our conversations from before, we need at least 9 people to serve on the charter commission. If more than 9 people submit candidate petitions, then we would have their names on the ballot as well so that people can pick the commission.
Okay, thank you for
This
clarifying.
is not actually approving the charter itself or even the
Right.
concept of home rule. First, the charter commission needs to do some work to draft a charter.
Yeah.
So I move to approve, oh, I'm sorry. I
Yeah.
move to approve
Hang
ordinance
on,
number
Dave.
2020.
Wait.
Okay, I'll lay by my dish.
Yeah.
Go ahead,
Thank you.
Trustee Morris.
Thank you for clarifying. I guess my concern or my question is that short statement, that question, is that going to be enough on the ballot? Actually, let me come at it from a different angle. Will there be other information provided either in the blue book that goes out or town information or resources so that the people in town know what that means, know what the process is that we want to start? I would hate for us to go another round of trying to implement this process and then have it be voted down either for lack of information or lack of awareness of what it is. So I guess that's my only concern or question, really.
So that's an excellent question. This will not contain, the information on this question would not be in the blue book because this is not a Tabor question. The blue book is really for ballot notices on Tabor questions. That said, in your packet, there was an informational document that Linda put in the packet that is questions and answers about home rule and FAQs. And we were talking at a pre-meeting with the mayor and staff and the mayor pro tem about possibly putting that information out in the next newsletter or billing. Is that it, Linda? The next billing that would go out.
That's right, in the newsletter, yes.
So that information would be out there. And then of course, it's like anything, it's an election question, and we'd look to people to hopefully get out and campaign and provide information. We can't expend public funds to advocate for it, but certainly as individuals, you can get out there and talk to your neighbors and explain what this is all about. And I do think that handout is some pretty good information, and maybe we need to look at it yet again and just make sure it differentiates what they're doing this November versus what they would be doing next November. And I'm happy to take another look at that. But yeah, it's a great question. And I think that absolutely no point putting anything on the ballot if you don't have a way of letting people know what it's about. So.
All right. Thank you.
Any other questions before I let Dave do his motion? Trustee Strauss.
This is kind of a strange question. Could a trustee that would be, let's say, up for re-election or would have the ability to run for another board seat, could they also run on this commission on the chance that maybe if they didn't get on the board, they could still be on this commission?
Great question. I think I've talked with you before about whether or not, so there's a statute that says you can't hold more than 2 elected offices. And obviously the role of a charter commissioner is an elected position, right? I mean, we're going to have an election to put them on the charter commission. You would have to resign one or the other. And the problem with that is if only 9 people run for the charter commission and then you're forced to resign, then we don't have enough people to be on the charter commission and we've wasted our time. That said, there are attorneys out there who take the position that the charter commission isn't really a municipal position, it's more of a citizens board position. And so they have allowed elected officials to serve. I think though there's a level of credibility that comes from with the work of a charter commission if it's not dictated by the elected board of trustees. In other words, the idea that the charter commission is truly a group of citizens who want to make decisions about the future of the town, uninfluenced by the politics of the city council or the board of trustees, I think plays better. And so we've always advised our clients not to allow people who are elected on the board or the council to also sit on the charter commission.
Thank you.
And Maureen, correct me if I'm wrong, but they wouldn't be able to run for the board seat and the charter seat, right? They couldn't be on the same ballot.
That's what he's asking. Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Yeah.
Okay.
So you said you
Well,
could,
they're
but you
allowed
would
to
have
be on
to
the same
resign.
ballot as long as we're going to stick to the position that you can't serve on both at the same time.
Oh, I thought you couldn't run, or I thought you couldn't be on 2. Okay.
Well, that's what I was just discussing. Some municipal lawyers have taken the position that you can be on a charter commission and be on an elected board governing body. So we've never advised our clients that should be done. So.
Yeah, but I think what Linda's asking is, can you run for 2 positions at the same time?
Well, you can if there are 2 different positions. If one is if we were to take the position that the charter commission is just a citizen board and not an elected position of the municipality, then you could run at the same time because it's like you would be running for a special district seat and a town board seat. But again, we don't have clear guidance on that. The conservative approach is that you can't serve in both of those roles. So.
Cool.
One or the other.
Any other questions from anyone else? I am seeing none. Okay, Dave. Fire away.
Move to approve ordinance number 2020-658, an ordinance of the Board of Trustees of the Town of Lochbuie, initiating the adoption of a home rule charter for the Town of Lochbuie, providing for the election of charter commission members, and authorizing participation in the 2020 coordinated general election.
Second,
I have a motion from trustee Ott and a second from trustee Strack. Roll call, please.
Trustee Morris,
Yes.
Mayor Lofgren,
Yes.
Trustee Westcott,
Yes.
Trustee Ott,
Aye.
Trustee Doherty,
Yes.
Trustee Strack,
aye.
Trustee Jeffrey.
Yes.
Thank you.
And the motion carries 7-0. Next item on the agenda is discussion item 8A, the budget calendar and discussion of work sessions. Is that Ms. Rademacher or Steve?
Thank you, Mayor and
Steve.
Board.
Okay.
So you do have a budget calendar in front of you tonight, and the board's first work session is scheduled for August 11th. So it'll be in the off Tuesday in August. And we will probably schedule additional meetings between then and September 15 is our first draft budget to the board. We will have follow-up work sessions after that, but kind of depending on how the budget process goes, and we'll insert additional work sessions as the need arises for that. You'll be seeing a lot of information earlier, and which is good.
Okay. Is it going to be, or is the initial work session going to be similar to last year where you kind of have PowerPoints from everyone?
Yes.
Okay. Any questions or comments for Steve? Is everyone available for August 11th? I'm not seeing
Sorry.
any hand.
I'm not available that night. There's a Silver Peaks home HOA meeting that night. So.
Okay. Anyone else?
I'm available.
Okay, yeah, I'm not seeing any virtual hands, so I'll take that to mean everyone is available except for trustee Westcott.
And we
Is there,
will,
yeah, go ahead.
we will distribute the information to trustee Westcott as well. And she could, contact either me or Denise for questions.
Okay, anything else? Any questions for Steve on that from anyone else? Okay, thank you for the update. Next
What time's the
item
budget? What
is-
time's the meeting going to be?
Let's try and do it at 6.
6, okay.
Perfect. Okay. Next item is discussion item 8B, the cleanup day event. Mr. Johns.
Well, I prepared a report as far as kind of how the 2 days went as far as the cleanup event. I didn't want to go through the whole report, but I did add on kind of what my recommendations were based on the large amount of residents that came with 5 to 6 trips, as well as other municipalities, what they've done. So I think everyone's gotten a lot of feedback and probably heard how it went. Unfortunately, it did not go well. But I kind of wanted to get as much information in front of the board and kind of, I guess, open it up for discussion or any questions you might have for me.
Okay, I am looking for virtual hands if anyone has comments or questions. I know we all heard from the community on this, so let's not everyone be shy now and say nothing. Really? Trustee Ad, I know you heard from some people. How about you weigh in?
I had a bunch of people call me and make all kinds of noise about it. And I talked to Mr. Johns, and I understand people came with a bunch of loads, which I don't know exactly how we're going to control that. But I have a big problem with the way Waste Management handled it. I mean, my understanding is they hauled out more dumpsters on Friday with one guy than they did Saturday with 2 people. they just kind of slow walked us. And I think, they should provide us with another day. They screwed it up. We need to hold them accountable. As everybody knows, I'm not a fan of waste management to begin with. So it would break my heart if, we held them accountable and, made them give us at least, if we schedule another cleanup day, or a couple days for cleanup, I'd like to make them give us one day for free, just to, so they have some accountability for their screw up. So that's all I've got to say on it.
Trustee Strack, I saw your hand up.
You know, it somewhat appears that waste management kind of created a lot of this problem, along with trying to regulate a lot of our citizens and their loads. So I agree we need to figure out a way to limit people to what they bring to some extent, and keep the commercial people from making dump load after dump load. But it certainly be like a lot better to have more participation from waste management or whoever the trash company is at the next time. Thank you.
No, I don't see any other hands, but that was my concern as well, is what kind of conversations do we have with waste management after the fact with this? Because it seems like our staff took a lot of heat for what was primarily a waste management problem. And part of the reason that really frustrates me is this was like 4 days after waste management came and gave us a presentation about how great they are and all the wonderful things they're doing for the town and how we should all be very thankful for the service they're providing. And then this just became a train wreck, in part because they didn't adequately staff it. So I guess I'm curious what conversations we've had with them and what their response was.
So I had a conversation with Allie on Friday. I was not able to get a hold of her on Saturday, but I had multiple conversations with her on Friday, and reached out as far as a concern that I knew Saturday was going to be a train wreck. Friday, we had 12 roll-offs prepared before we even started, so we were ahead of the game. That's why Friday went so smooth. After the fact, I did have a conversation with Allie. She got me in contact with their basically their dispatch manager. He was very accommodating, apologetic. I did express my frustrations because walking a line of 75 cars and taking the brunt of the conversation was a pretty tough day. It's a lesson learned on my behalf. I think it's something that I would definitely be a little bit more prepared and involved on the staffing level. With waste management, I was not involved. They basically staffed it based on their thoughts as far as how it would run. But the manager mentioned to me that he wanted to work with us in the future, and we would coordinate something so it is a little bit more timely. He did say he would look into the issue as far as why one of the drivers was called off. I have not heard anything back. The one thing I would say is it might just be a little bit of an anomaly of a year. Every municipality that I reached out to that had a cleanup day basically received twice the number of roll-offs people. It just was overwhelming compared to their averages in the previous year. So maybe it's a one-off. I don't know, but that was the resounding feedback that I got from other municipalities, is that you need to be prepared because everyone's bringing a lot of stuff.
Because they were home and cleaning up.
Yep.
So I guess my kind of follow-up question to that is, so your recommendation was potentially limiting load size and the number of trips people could make. I guess my question on that is, did you get the impression that people were abusing it and that they were bringing trash from other places? Or is this really just a circumstance where what I don't want to run into is where we limit people from bringing the trash that they're actually cleaning off their own property, because that's the whole idea of the event. So if we're actually imposing these new limits to prevent abuses, I'm 100% on board. But if these limits are going to end up causing separate issues and that people just leave this stuff on their property, I don't really want that to be the result either.
It's hard to tell. We're trying to check IDs. I think from my perspective, what I've seen in doing cleanup days for almost 10 years now, I would say when you have people that are making 5 to 6 trips with 20-foot trailers that are 6 feet high, that's just a large amount of debris from one resident. There was a
Right.
couple of people I was talking to that said that they were going kind of around the community, just picking up for people, which is great. But again, it leaves that open question: is it, are you picking up for residents in Loch Buoy, or is it maybe just picking up around people you know and you're bringing stuff in? We did get one 30-foot gooseneck trailer that was full of commercial product. It filled almost, a roll off by itself. To me, that's the kind of stuff we should be limiting. But unfortunately, the way it was stipulated is that, we didn't have size limitations. You could bring whatever you wanted and it was unlimited dump. So I just think some sort of control, maybe if we were to do like 2 dumps, maybe we entertain the idea, since we're going to kind of limit the amount they can dump, maybe we do it multiple times throughout the year. Um, some of the suggestions were is maybe we do something as far as, because we did receive a lot of wood, maybe I could reach out to the company that Mead uses, which is out of Fort Lupton, and try to mulch it. And maybe that's something where we collect it all, we get it mulched up, and maybe we give it back to the residents for something for their yards. That's kind of a nice give back to the residents as well. I would say probably a third of everything we received were tree limbs, wood debris of that nature that could probably be mulched up.
Right. Yeah, the town I grew up in did that, and that always worked phenomenally. And if we had the ability to do that, I think. I saw Trustee Westcott's hand up.
I just wanted to speak to Mark's question about whether this was a one-off. We did an HOA dump day a year ago with Waste Management. The exact same thing happened on Saturday. They didn't have drivers. They didn't get the roll-offs when they were supposed to be arriving. And we wound up, because of the problems, they wound up suggesting that we leave one of the trash, the roll-offs on site, until they could pick it up on Monday. And then I think we incurred another $600 to $1,000 worth of cost because Waste Management wouldn't come pick it up. Well, they came and they were like, well, it's too tall now. People have been dumping over it all over the weekend. It was unattended. Anyway, they took no ownership for it, and we ended up having to get another company to come out and clean up the stuff that they wouldn't take that had been dumped because they left it overnight. Anyway, so there you go.
So they refused to come get it and then blamed you that people put stuff in it. That's awesome. Trustee App?
Well, again, Waste Management strikes again. I mean, I've been for these guys since day one. They always put the blame on somebody else. They beat their chest on saying how good they are, and they never follow through. So if we have another pickup day, as far as I'm concerned, they owe us at least one free day. They need to take some responsibility for their lack of performance. Lack of preparation and execution on their part does not constitute an emergency on the town's part.
Yeah. I appreciate your update, Mr. Johns, and I do thank you and your staff for everything you did to make this event as successful as it could be in light of the circumstances. I know I speak for myself and probably for the majority of the board in saying no one places much, if any, blame on our staff for what happened in this event. And I think a lot of people, including in the community, recognize that it wasn't much your fault as it was Waste Management's. And I think this is certainly something that you guys should be continuing to have a conversation with them, and that this board should consider the next time Waste Management's contract comes up. Not so much in that we necessarily are terminating a contract with them as we are saying, how do we avoid having this happen again and again and again, because it seems to have become a repeated problem at this point. The only other thing I would say is if we do impose the limits on size of load, maybe one concern is those people that show up with 30-foot trailers, we give them a voucher and say, drive to the dump and dump your roll-off full of stuff rather than filling up one of the roll-offs that's on site.
And there's multiple different things and that I can look into. It's just whatever the board would like me to kind of, whatever rabbit hole we want to kind of go down. I did reach out to Waste Management. they refrained from kind of having people come out to a dump. So I don't know if I can look at other places where we might be able to do some sort of a voucher system. That's what I've done in the past. It's worked really well. And like I said, there's lots of different options, ideas. I know Brighton is having theirs coming up, and they're doing a 4-day process. They are much bigger, but maybe extending out an extra day gives people, so it's not so compacted into just a couple of days. There's multiple ways we could do this.
Right. Yeah. Well, I look forward to your recommendations, and it looks like Trustee Westcott had her hand up one more time.
I just
Yeah.
wanted to say thank you. My husband was there first thing Friday morning. He was in and out. He was really happy that he didn't have to wait. So that first part of it was smooth, and I had no idea that there were going to be problems on Saturday, but Friday, good.
Thank you. Yeah, I think we had a really good setup and how we rolled out had the roll-offs lined up and the process. We couldn't have asked for more. We just and I'm not trying to lay blame. We fell short in an area. That's all I'm going to say.
Cool. Thank you very much. Any other questions or comments from the board on that? Seeing none, we will move on to staff reports. Mr. Stamey. Steve, are you muted?
Thank you. Yeah.
There you go.
Couple of quick updates. We are following up with the question we had on hotspots, and we're trying to determine if that would be an eligible cost under the CARES Act funding. I've also had communications with Greg Rabenhorst and his IT person to see what they're doing as far as hotspots, and they've got a pretty extensive system right now of hotspots, and we're also looking at maybe trying to connect Town Hall into that fiber optic line to give us more capacity as well. So I'm following up with that. An update, we do have the 2 RFPs being posted for the water and wastewater cost of service studies. So that'll be proceeding, and we'll get some good submittals for that.
Steve, what will be the timing on those if we do push forward?
I want to have it, the schedule right now is to be completed by December 1st.
Okay.
It may be optimistic, but that's the schedule. Yeah. So other than that, it's really is getting the budget kicked off and a lot of staff work going on and getting the budget put together right now. So unless you have questions, I don't have anything else to comment on.
Looking for virtual hands. And Trustee App.
I have a question on the CDOT stuff on Highway 52. How much is that going to impact the detour going through Lock Buoy? I'm trying to read what you've got on here, and it says truck traffic from the eastbound frontage road would be directed to County Road 8 to County Road 41 to Highway 52. So that if that stays north of us, it really won't affect us.
Correct. So that was a follow-up conversation that we had with Weld County Public Works and CDOT. They had an initial detour route of using County Road 4 and County Road 37. So we got set up with a conference call with CDOT and Weld County. CDOT changed their proposed traffic routing to the routes of County Road 8 and County Road 41.
Good, thank you.
Anyone else? I'm looking here. Seeing none, thank you for your update, Mr. Stamey. Does any other staff have anything to report tonight? Clerk Blackson or Mr. On?
Nothing, thank you.
Seeing no. Mr. Johns, anything else you wanted to add tonight?
I just want to mention to the board that there will be a closure of 37 and the frontage road starting the 20th through the 27th. I'm getting a map together. They'll be putting up a message board along the frontage road to let traffic know. But I want to let everyone know that that is coming in the near future.
Is that to finish up the roundabout project or work on the project?
Yes. Yeah,
Okay.
that's to finish up the roundabout project. That'll be the last phase, going into the last phase.
And where will that closure be at?
We're gonna have a conversation about it tomorrow at the 1 o'clock meeting. They're looking at closing, basically, it would be the northbound section of the frontage road going up to 37, and then part of 37 going up to the north entrance into the gas station is what's proposed right now.
Perfect. Cool. Thank you. Any questions for Mr. Johns on that from anyone? Seeing none, I think that's all of our staff reports for today. I'll move to Mayor Trustee comments, and I'll go opposite of our last discussion and start with Trustee Jeffrey.
I don't have anything. I do want to apologize for missing the last meeting on very short notice. But I don't have anything else to report right now at this time.
Okay. Trustee Doherty,
Nothing.
Trustee Ott,
Uh,
Dave. I think you're muted, Dave.
Okay, I think I'm back. I just wanted to thank the board for, it seems like we're always working in the best interest of the town and sticking to their guns for what is in the best interest of the town. And that's all I've got.
Okay. Trustee Strack.
I guess I'll probably echo that. I had a lot of fun tonight, and I'm really proud to be a part of this board and part of this town. Thank you.
Trustee Morris.
I have nothing. Thanks.
Trustee Westcott.
I just wanted to say thank you to Trustee Strock. I really appreciated the information that you presented tonight and the time that must have gone into preparing that research. It was very informative, and I just want to compliment you. I think it's a good example for what a trustee can do. I appreciate that.
Yeah, and my comments are pretty much the same. That was very detailed, Larry, and I certainly appreciated your comments, especially to the extent they went to the health and welfare concerns related to gas stations and truck stops in town. So thank you for that. And I don't think I have anything tonight. So our next meeting will be July 21st at 6:30 p.m. We will be staying remote for that second meeting in July, continuing to cross our fingers that maybe the numbers in Colorado start to justify us going back in person in August. I know Trustee Ott would like us to be back in person as soon as humanly possible, as his half smile and now full smile suggests. But for July, we will certainly be remaining remote with hopes that August we can switch back to in person and see each other in the boardroom again. If there are no other comments or concerns tonight, I will check for hands one more time. I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
I move we adjourn.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? We are adjourned at 8:10 p.m. Thank you, everyone.
All right, guys, thanks.
Bye, everybody. Good night.
Yeah.
Good night, everybody. Have a good evening.
Well, thank you.
Good night, everybody. Thank you.